All right. Hi, everyone. Let us know if you can hear and see me well. And we are almost ready to start. Let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Share your location in the chat. And since today we have a webinar on AI, let me know how often do you use AI in your work. And always curious to know. Let me see if everything is all right. Okay. Hello, hello. Oh, I already can see people. Yes, guys, write down in the chat. Okay, great. Tina, hi. Nice to see you again. Today we have a very exciting topic. As you can see, we're going to talk about AI, and we have a really amazing guest. Okay. I think we're live and ready to start. I'm super excited to welcome our speaker today, Ben Gonshaw, who is a user experience director and game designer who has over 20 years of experience of working with AI. Yes, you heard it correct. 20 years. AI has been such a hot topic lately, but guess what? Ben has worked with it closely for far, far longer. So imagine just 20 years. Some of us weren't even using computers at the time. And today we will discuss how AI can help us become better designers, better creators. Ben will share his experience and how he tends to work with AI in his own projects. Okay, I will turn him in and turn him on. And hi, Ben.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I cannot but mention Ben's client list that includes Nike, BBC, Volvo, and so many more amazing clients. And his projects were nominated for BAFTA. And Ben also has a degree in AI and psychology, both AI and psychology. So I'm sure it will be a very interesting talk. Okay, and a little announcement from us before we start. Every month we are hosting webinars on web design, on marketing, content creation, and more. Make sure you are subscribed to our webinars newsletter where we share our latest updates. Okay, and for those who aren't subscribed yet, you can follow the link in the chat or the description if you're watching this from the recording, and you will get a nice bonus of 3 months of Tilda personal subscription. Okay, so that was the announcement, and I think we are ready to start with Ben's presentation today. Ben, tell us a bit more about yourself, your projects, and yes, we are ready to discuss our today's topic.
Yeah,
Oh,
amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how AI can help us to design differently. But first, just a little bit about my background. So, as already mentioned, I started off like my academic career with a degree in AI and a degree in psychology. And that was back in the time when no one really knew what AI was. When I told people I was studying artificial intelligence, they come back and say to me, "Hey, that's like what you've got, isn't it? Artificial intelligence." That was about the level of understanding that there was around AI back in those days. But having done the degree and understanding sort of how we think, and then translating that through to how we can emulate that and make computers think as well, I took that knowledge with me and went into the games industry. It's always been a passion of mine, and I was very fortunate to have an opening and a window into that world. And during that time, I made games for Disney, I made games for Sony, and I made games for Microsoft as well. And after spending some time in games, I wanted to widen out and make bigger digital experiences that went across channels, that could really get into people's lives and help people. So I went to work in the world of digital agencies. I worked with AKQA, where I was on accounts with Nike, BBC, Volvo, with Huge, where I was working in financial industries, with Vanguard, Barclays Private Bank, and then McCann World with MRM, their digital arm, again, with many clients from Coca-Cola Company and beyond. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about the very first thing that I made when I came out from university. And it was a game called Creatures. And Creatures is a sandbox video game with these little creatures inside of it. And these creatures have neural network brains. So you can teach them things about their world and they can learn about their world. And they had biological drives like hunger and pain and cold and tiredness and the urge to procreate. And that gave them the drive to go and experiment and do things in the world to fulfill those needs. And we also built a natural language interface, so you could type to them in English and they'll reply about what they're doing, how they're feeling, what they're thinking about, and they can even talk to each other and in that way learn from each other and persuade each other to do things. And when we did that, the team at Cyberlife, led by Steve Grand, that was back in 1999. And those little creatures, when they came out of their eggs, they had their neural network brains. And this is an actual picture of the tool we used back in that time to manually construct the neural networks that were their brain. And this is the entirety of the network, which is just under 1,000 neurons, whereas today's neural networks have over 1 trillion connections. And those little creatures look something like this. And when I was putting this presentation together and trying to source all the images for it, it's been a little while since I've looked at this, I was absolutely amazed and delighted to discover people are still playing this game, and they're even live streaming it, which was sort of delightful for me to discover. But anyway, enough about the past. Let's look today towards what we're talking about, and that's how we can maybe design things in a new way, in a better way, with the help of AI. And I think it's also interesting to flip that story on its head a little bit and think, well, how can we approach design in itself, right? How can we rethink some of the fundamentals that we hold central to design to help us in using AI better? When actually, of course, using AI can also help us to design new things in new ways. And in that way, those two different modes feed into each other. You know, changing what we think of design helps us to find more and better ways to use AI and then integrate that into our everyday workflows and our thinking. So that's really going to be the two parts of the talk that I'm going to lead you through today. Part one, very much about unlearning design, and then part two about mastering design. So let's jump straight in to unlearning design. And I think this absolutely brilliant response to a letter really sums up the everyday struggle of the designer. I think we all know it. And apparently it's also a struggle for mathematicians, physicists, and writers too, because this quote has been attributed to all three of these people, actually. Because what we really do as designers, right, we search for that perfect design and we go through this process to try and create the simplest possible execution, right, the most elegant design with nothing in it that distracts you, nothing you don't absolutely need, so we can home in on that most focused, right, purposeful end state and then really polish it. So as designers, we've sort of trained ourselves to look for areas in the visual design and in the content where there's repetition, see where we can cut things out, see what things we could simplify. And in order to do that, we have to really deeply understand who's using our design, right? What the purpose of the design is, why are people using it, what are they trying to achieve? Because that helps us to make sure that, you know, we don't cut out something that's fundamental, or worse, elevate something that's completely meaningless and doesn't aid people in the task that the design is there to help with. And in doing that, you know, we test it with people, we refine it, we test it again, and we keep doing it, and we keep going through that loop until, right, it's perfect. That's what we do. The thing is, though, that those habits of simplifying things, of removing things, of reducing things, they're not actually great for using AI. But the other pieces that inform how we do that, right, that underlying the critical analysis that sits underneath it, that's super important. And to illustrate this, I want to share with you an experience I had when making an expert trainer for Nike and Microsoft on Xbox. I'm going to show you a cut down trailer for the tool. I'm not going to make you sit through the entire trailer, but I just want to give you a flavor of what it was that we accomplished as a team at AKQA with the development partners in Sheffield and Scotland.
Anyone can use the Nike Plus Connect trainer. The aim is to get athlete fit. So you could be someone who's not very active, or like myself, someone who trains often, all catered and personalized.
First, let's start with the quick assessment so I can determine what to start you in your program.
The technology tracks your body. It tracks your results. It corrects your form. It makes sure you're doing things right.
Great job. That's a new personal best.
You know, to have the Nike Plus trainer or assistant there to help, you never feel like you can go wrong.
Keep the pace.
Past 6 weeks, I've been training to hit my moment, which is a mile under 5 minutes, something I never thought I'd be able to do. It's official. 4:59, we broke it. Now it's time for you guys to step up and do your moment.
I've been able to complete my moment.
You can take it as far as you want to take it. And I think that's the greatest part, is that there is no limit.
Okay. I won't make you sit through any more of that, but that sort of gives you an idea. What we did was to create essentially an expert trainer and put them in your room with a tracking camera that can see your pose, posture, and correct that over in real time. And what's interesting is that what Nike trainers normally do when they're doing this, and this is what the expert trainers are used to doing every day, is looking how to make a really, really simple and easy to follow plan, because this is something that they then teach to over 10,000 fitness coaches across the world. And they need to be able to understand that in such a way that then they can take that and confidently run classes and do one-to-one training to train everyday people like you and me how to improve their fitness. So what that means in this case is that that simplicity makes it really easy to learn and teach. So being easy in this case is really good, and that proves once again actually that simple is good design. But if we were to take that simple plan and create the AI based off of those simple rules that are easy for us to learn and to share with each other, then that results in some very simple boilerplate training, cookie cutter. Everybody ends up getting roughly the same thing. So in this case, actually, simple is basic and basic is bad. So what we did was come together with the expert trainers to understand how it was that they actually make their decisions. How do they understand when to ease up on someone, when to double down, when to swap out a drill, when to increase load or maybe decrease reps, and how to use those in combination? And what if the person had poor hip stability, or they had a very strong core, or all the thousands of factors that go into their decision when they're watching somebody train? How do they determine how to change their training to aim for a particular type of goal and support them in the progress they're making or in the struggles that they're having? So it's really understanding the why, because if we understand the way they train, you know, the why behind the what of the program, then we can take that and feed all of that in to create an AI. And then the AI itself can then train all the everyday athletes, as Nike calls them. Everybody with a body is an athlete, and that's us. And this was a really hard mode switch for the trainers because they'd spent an absolute lifetime distilling their knowledge into something really simple, really shareable. And we were challenging them to make something really complex, really nuanced, which in their minds won't work because you can't teach it, except you weren't teaching it to a human, right? We were teaching it to an AI. So it did work. And I want to share a few learnings from that process with you that I put into practice every day when I'm working with AI now. And the first one is, you can actually make really complicated things. And the beauty of it is that AI will then make it simple for users to use. So who are those users, right? That uses you, right? That user could be your customer or a consumer. It could be your clients, right? In every category now, there are assistants emerging that allow you to do very complex things actually very simply. And it means you have more power. It means that you can think complex when in the past you've been forced to think simple. I'm going to show you one example of the thousands of tools that are out there, but not necessarily so much about what the tool does itself. It's more thinking about how that opens the way to complexity in what you can do and achieve. And this is something from Amazon, where you can just feed in some product images. It can then generate some nice backgrounds for you. And that's great. Okay, that simplifies the task for you. But it's not about what it does in terms of simplification. It's about what that simplicity then means and how you can go ahead and apply it. So here they are now creating, say, a seasonal campaign, something now we can switch up our entire catalog of things to match the current season. And that might be the current season. Maybe it's a sports event. Maybe it's something else. And how often can you now do this? Whereas once it was a hard and complicated thing to put together that product catalog imagery just the one time. Now it's possible not just to generate it easily, but in the time that you save, then be able to think in scale. So it's a change from thinking about what's the minimal thing you can execute because you've got limited time to what's the maximum that I can achieve. Can I send an email to my customers where all the images are personalized, each and every one of them informed by the season, maybe what sports games are happening right now, their age, whatever factors you can dream up. And actually big platforms like Adobe Experience Cloud are already in the zone to allow that. So you need to start asking yourself, right, what's the biggest thing I can make in the time I have? Because AI allows you to redefine what bigger means. And I think the other thing about size and complexity is about being maximal to get really good results. You can get really specific and then really deep with prompts to get great results. And I'm not really in the business of showing you lovely images that's made by AI because our feeds are drowning in them. But just this idea that if you can put the detail into the prompt, then you can get great results out of it. And I think one of the things that AI is very good at is giving us maximal answers. And given AI's propensity to be maximal, it can actually be a great help to have AI talk to itself. One of the great shortcuts that I use and many people also use is asking AI to create the perfect prompts for you. And there's 3 magic components to this. The first is to tell the AI to act as a prompt engineer. So you're setting the scene. The second is to tell it what the prompt is for. And the third, and this is the magic part, is to say, ask me any questions you have that will help you to make that perfect prompt. And once you've done that, the AI is going to, in a very maximal way here, ask you all of these questions. And what's brilliant about this is that it gets you to think really deeply about what you're doing so that you can be specific. And it encourages you to be maximal in your reply. So going big here will get you big results. And then the ensuing prompt that comes from this will be big and detailed and have everything in it that will then get you the results that you want. I think the third thing that I learned from doing all of this is that, you know, AI is very good with things, but it's not great at why we're doing them in the first place. And that's our special space. And that's something that I want to dig into a little bit more in this next section about mastering design. So this is the part 2. And you can imagine, you know, the internet is built from cats. The internet is 75% cat, some part dog if you love dogs. And this image prompt, you can imagine, will create some really, really beautiful imagery. Lots of cats, all wearing perfect work clothes. And, you know, we talked about going big and being maximal. And that can be a really big positive. It can be a really big benefit, but it can also be a problem in itself. You know, so as we maybe got that end result of those cats, before you got there, you had a few other options that you looked at and discarded as not being the route, you know, maybe 1 or 2, or actually maybe there was more than 1 or 2. Maybe there was a lot of different styles that came to you that you had to choose between. And maybe there were even more possibilities being thrown at you as you're exploring this space of cats and so many different styles, in so many different orientations, in so many different ways. And actually there's so many cats. And the problem here, the problem with this generation, the problem with maximal is, how do you actually make the choice? How do you choose between, it's almost Easter, how do you choose between the chocolate egg and the gift, right? How do you make a choice? It's hard enough to choose there where there's only an A or B choice. But when there's an infinity of choices, maybe the thing we should be asking ourselves is, how can I make a better decision here? How can I set myself up to win when there's so much choice? And for me, there's 2 ways to this. The first one is strong opinions. And the second one is actually finding better ways to do it. So let's dig a little bit into strong opinions first. So in the early days of email, there was this thing known as the 419 scam, the 419 being the penal code that these scammers were taken to task for. And they mostly came from Nigeria. And the way it worked was like this. These scammers send out millions of emails a week, right? And they get back so many replies, they just couldn't handle it, right? It was completely unmanageable to reply to them all, because it takes a huge amount of time to invest for the scammer in the person they're going to be cheating, to build a relationship, to pull off the scam, right? It meant days or weeks of conversations to build trust, to show willing, sharing details, and gradually reeling in the victim. But if you've got millions of people replying, not only couldn't you cope with the volume, but what if they picked the wrong person, right? Then they'd invest all of their time into someone who realizes it's a scam and pulls out. And that's the worst thing that can happen to them, because that completely wastes their time, and then they're not making any money. And that seems like an impossible problem, but they actually had the most genius solution to this. What if you could guarantee that the only people who replied to your email were the most likely people to fall for the scam in the first place? What if you could do that? And the answer was this. Write just the most ridiculously unbelievable message, right? Just something completely so far-fetched, something so obviously fake, so outrageously preposterous that no sane person would ever fall for it. Right? And when you look at this message, right, just every part of it screams nonsense, right? This is what happened to me. my family were killed, they were in the government in Tripoli, and now we've run off to Cotonou, Benin in West Africa, and here's the amount of money I've got, and even though I'm rich, I want to spend it on going to medical school, but I can't go to medical school, and I need you to try. I mean, the whole thing is just utter nonsense. And that in itself is the genius of it, because it creates a filter, and it filters out all the intelligent people. Not a single one of them are going to reply to that email and expect to get that money. And that leaves you with a small number of responses from simple people, often vulnerable people, and trolls. And they're the ones that are most likely going to be worth their while to invest their time in. And that's what we need. Because when it comes to having infinite possibilities for cat photos, we need an intelligent filter to mark out what we want before we even begin to search. And in order to do that, your opinion is everything. You are the tastemaker. You are the person that decides, like a creative director with an army of people underneath you, all doing your bidding. You need to know what you want in order to get what you want. And that means having some design principles, and actually not brand guidelines, but generative guidelines, right? Set out your principles, set out your guardrails, set out your desired outcome, and picture your win before you even begin. And that looks like quite a traditional way of setting up a concept. You start with the mission and the values that you want to fulfill, and the purpose of this piece that you're putting together. And from that purpose, you can capture the emotional tone that delivers on it in the best way, and a concept or an idea that can ladder back to that purpose. And between those, that will tell you what the color palette should be alongside the brand palette, what the visual style needs to be, what subject and object of the images should be, and how to frame it, what the composition should be to deliver on that tone, to deliver on that idea, to ladder to the purpose and fulfill the mission and the values. So if we go back to the infinite cats and imagine the reason that I was trying to find those was because I'm trying to put something together for a pet concierge service. Those things we can now translate and put against each one of these areas. So we, in this imaginary place, this company, they care as much about the pet as you do, right? Every detail matters. And the purpose of the image that we're trying to make is to raise awareness of the pet care concierge. So you want a tone that's very comforting, makes you feel like they are going to take care, and your pets will be at ease in this environment. And the concept behind this is, well, why don't we have a cat as the concierge? And in order to deliver all those things, green colors, gold colors, green is very calming in terms of how emotions map against colors. We're going with an Art Deco style because that's how the concierge is done in terms of the brand, and so on and so on and so on. And each of these different elements then becomes a piece of the prompt that you can use to generate your image. And I took this prompt and I put it into 2 different image generation tools, and this is the very first image that they created, right? The very first one. On the left is DALL-E via Copilot, on the right, Stable Diffusion. With just that one prompt, it got me exactly what I wanted to get, exactly the composition, exactly everything, because I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to have. I'd done some exploration already. I knew what I wanted, and I was able to clearly articulate at length in a maximal way precisely what I wanted. So I already pre-filtered to get the answer. So you do get to be that creative director where everybody's walking past you in the room, and you get this succession of creatives coming through the door showing this work they've slaved over, and you get to go, yes, no, yes, right? And you're not the person on the right with rabbits for fingers. And you're probably not the film noir lady on the left either. But you are the person in control. And in order to be in control, you need to have very firm and clear ideas of what you want. And that's how you direct. And the second part to this I wanted to cover is about better tools in general. Because usually what we do with text-based diffusion models is put in the prompt, we pray to the non-deterministic neural nets that they're going to give us what we want, and we just get the result, and you see what you get. And it's, as Martin Nebelong says, it's the luck of the text prompt slot machine. Martin Nebelong is a pioneer in interactive generation of images, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what that means, because the alternative way is to use image-based diffusion models, where not only do you give a prompt, but you also give some visual direction as well. And that turns it from being a call and response, hoping the echo is going to sound right, into a conversation. It turns it into a true collaboration. I'm going to show you a few of the things that Martin has achieved, and talk to you a little bit about what that is and the tools that are there. So in this, you can see a Photoshop window, and on the left you can see all these drawing is a green line, and with a window through to the AI is in real time generating images, and the images it's generating them so quickly that it almost feels like he's painting the outcome, but he isn't. He's just putting in a few colors, and then he's changing the prompt to say stems and leaves, and it's drawing and generating the leaves for him with the correct lighting, all from just a little dash of color and a few spots. So he's not using any complex tools or brushes here. All he's doing is putting in circles, lines, and shapes, and the AI is real time transporting that into something else. And you can see the same process here as he draws the person with the purple hair, and he can take that as well. On the left is the quick sketch in Photoshop, and on the right is the output from Kriya AI, and then that's taken from Kriya through Magnific AI, which upscales it, and then from there, I just pause that, and then from there he takes it into CSM AI's 2D to 3D image, and suddenly a sketch becomes 3D. And that same technique is used here with a tool called Peek Through. So Photoshop on the top, Kriya AI in the background generating all the images. Again, he's just doing some shapes and moving things around in a non-destructive way, and Kriya is generatively creating new images. And actually, if you want to get the perfect composition, here on the left is a really rough, fast sketch that was created using Dreams on PS5. And that's fed through into Kriya in real time. And on the right, Kriya is creating the AI generated image, so that he's actually art directing in real time to find the precise pose and exact output that he wants, which I feel is a much improved way of getting the exact look you want, rather than trying to describe they're facing 3/4 left with their eyes to the right, and so on and so on. You can just pose how you want to and let the AI create it at a very high quality. So I'm just going to wrap up what we've been talking about, all of the things that we've mentioned and we've talked about today. Maybe some thoughts to take away. Think big. Right? Maximal is absolutely best, right? Both in how you apply AI, in terms of that, and in terms of what you dream you can achieve. You can achieve much bigger than you could ever achieve before. Don't think small. But at the same time, make in a small way. Don't burden yourself with infinite possibilities. Picture your goal, consciously filter to avoid drowning, and use your skill as a designer, not just as a creative person who designs and shapes things, but that logical process of design. Use that thinking to constrain the space into something much more manageable. And then the final aspect is begin to use this new generation Gen 2 tooling to more closely connect with your work. So thank you all for this. And like all images you've seen today, this slide was AI generated, but this slide sucked. But thank you all very much for listening, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thanks. Guys, if you have any questions for Ben, feel free to leave them in the chat. And also, I think Tina from the chat had a really good point. Yeah, she said, good point. Can things like creativity and the sense of beauty really be taught? So I think that pretty much, yeah, summarizes your talk. So far, yeah, I think I have a question from our team, and it's going to be quite a basic one, but like, as someone who has worked with AI for so many years, like far longer than all of us have, what's your prediction on the future of AI? Will we all be replaced or not?
No, I think AI is going to become a superpower for all of us. And I think very much that AI and the power of AI is almost an event horizon kind of moment, in that you can't see beyond the event horizon. It's completely black, and it's an unknowable place. And the reason I say that is that in the same way that when the iPhone was released, you wouldn't have realized that the release of the iPhone meant that you would then be able to have 2-hour delivery on any product you can ever imagine, and be able to track its journey to you and to your door. Like, those two things don't seem linked. In the same way that when the steam engine was invented, no one ever realized that the invention of the steam engine would mean that we had to synchronize our clocks. And it was the first time we ever had to have one time zone and fixed time zones. Before that, each village would have its own separate time. And the reason was because trains could then take you between one place and the next, had to standardize it, or train timetables didn't work. And you couldn't have imagined 200 years before, when they invented a steam engine to pump water out of mines, that it would change our concept of time. And AI is a similar thing. It's going to reach very fundamentally into every part of our lives, and we can't even imagine what that's going to do for us, which is incredibly exciting, and I believe also for some people also quite scary too.
Thanks. So we have some questions from the chat. Ricky writes, what are some of the costs involved with each element of the technology you have shown?
It's a great question, Ricky. So Kriya has a small monthly subscription. Like, it's less than $50 a month, much less. In those other tools that we used, it was basically Photoshop with a free plugin that lets you see through your window to another window, and that other window was Kriya AI. So between those two, if you've got Creative Cloud or you're using some other kind of visual tool, it's almost sort of as much as you want to spend it in that way. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so the next one. When do you anticipate that AI will become an integral component of the web's design process?
I think it depends on who you are. And I think many of us are already harnessing AI, perhaps without even realizing it, because there's lots of things happening in the background to do alignment. Even if you're using a tool like Figma or you're using a tool like Tilda, there's lots of design decisions that are being made under the hood in order to just make sure that everything aligns nicely and things like that. So in a small way, you're already doing it. But I imagine your question is probably more pointed towards like the creative acts and like that active participation and to and fro with AI. And I think that's definitely something that I'd say 10 to 25% of people are already employing, and you can already do that. There are tools that exist where you can type in a prompt and it will generate web pages and apps for you that you can then take and use as inspiration to build out your own pages. And then at each stage of the different componentry that's being built out, that's part of the design process, there are AI enhanced tools that help with all of them. But I think the magic for the future when it comes to building with AI is actually that pages and content will become composed in real time based on the data and understanding we have about that particular user. So rather than making one static page for all, or even a page for all with images that you may be served to 4 different audiences, suddenly it's going to become there's a million different audiences, and much of that content will be generated in real time to match them based off a set of rules and objectives that you have. So your objective might be to get people excited about a particular product or an event or a movement or concept, or just to buy a particular product. And with that objective in mind, the AI will match that with your brand guidelines and brand values, translate that into something that matches the data of the person visiting to give them the most persuasive experience.
Okay, thank you. And another question, if you don't mind, don't you think that sometimes AI can kind of spoil design just because it tends to simplify things and people tend to be lazy?
Yes, I love that question. And I think it comes back to that question of being the creative director and having mastery over the process. Let's remember, right, that 95% of everything is absolute duds, right? 95% of movies, 95% of music, 95% of everything that you see everywhere is pretty terrible. And maybe 1% of it is good, and a tiny fraction of that is, exemplary. So I think that's always going to be true. I think what you're saying is like human nature. It's human nature to be lazy. People aren't going to make great things. What it does is, on the one hand, it raises the bar and it allows those lazy people, as you call them, to create things that are of a higher quality. And in a way, that's going to push all of us to up our game and to be better, because the low bar is raising. And it's up to us as great designers and people who care about good design to continue to stay ahead of that. And I think we will, because we'll use AI in creative ways to do new creative things. You have to remember that all that AI can do and generate using diffusion models is a variation on something that it's already seen, i.e. it's something it's been trained on. And a great way to use AI is actually to find the thing that you shouldn't do, as in anything AI is going to give you is something that someone else has already done. So it's going to show you all the obvious things. And that's a great way of, again, using that way to be minimal and to cut things out. To say, okay, we shouldn't look in any of those directions because those are the common directions and everyone else is looking there. That means that the way forward is somewhere else. So you can use AI in that way as a filter to find the untrodden path.
Thank you. Oh, there is so much engagement in the chat. So we have another one. In your opinion, what are the primary limitations that currently prevent AI from further simplifying web design process, or just design process in general, I guess?
Sure. I think there's a lot of factors. So I'm trying to order those in my head as I'm speaking. I think one of them really is, it's around compute and cost. And what I mean by that is, if you've ever been to like Hugging Face to do the very early experiments with AI image generation or pic to text, you press generate and then you're in this queue and then you got to wait ages and then eventually you see something. That's because it costs a lot of money. It costs power, it costs compute time, right? It costs time in the data center, so on and so on and so on. It's a very boring answer, but part of the limitation is cost and compute power. And as compute rises, and there's been some amazing announcements from NVIDIA over the last 2 days about increasing compute and decreasing cost, that will open it out and that will become less of a limitation. And just to give you a little bit of context, the things that we were doing back in the late 90s, which was a time and it did exist and there was AI then, there was neural nets. The thing that prevented us from making what exists today wasn't our intelligence or how to use it. It was the lack of compute power and it was the lack of data. And now we have both. So as the amount of data increases and as the amount of compute increases, what we can do and achieve becomes exponentially more. And if you look at what's achievable now, if you look at the video generation with Sora and so on, that is, people didn't anticipate having that for another 2 or 3 years. The fact is that it came now, and you're going to see things that you didn't expect to see for 3 years happening tomorrow, and things that you didn't expect to see next week happening today. And the pace of change is always going to be rapid. So what's preventing it? I think partially it's how rapidly it's changing. By the time you've adopted something, something else has come along that's bigger and better.
Okay, thank you. So are there more? Oh, Tina writes, thank you for the webinar and especially for the cat part. Yeah, I loved the cats. Thank you for including the cats. It was not only insightful, but also really cute. Thank you, Tina, for your comment. Yeah, thank you, Ben, for including the cats. Always love to see it.
Love cats. We love a cat.
Yeah, you knew what to what to do exactly to keep the audience engaged. So guys, for those who are curious if Tilda has a built-in AI assistant, we actually have a text generator that you can use, and I will quickly just go over it and share how it works just real quick. So pretty much it helps you generate any type of website copy, like headlines, product descriptions, image captions, pricing plans, any other type of text that you may need on your page. So this feature works pretty easy. So it works in any type of text field. So if you have text on your website and if you click on it, then on the toolbar at the top, you can see the star icon that says generate with AI, and you can click on it and start using it. So, and our model, our AI works like that. So you will be asked to describe what your website is about. So this way AI can tailor the answer to your niche specifically. And finally, you can enter your prompt. So there are 2 steps. Usually, if you're using like ChatGPT or any other apps, you have only 1 step where you type in the prompt, but here we have 2 steps and 1 step for ticking the agreement. And if you're not happy with the result, you can change the prompt and simply click regenerate, and you will get another option. Okay, so try it out. I think it's really cool if you're in the early stages of developing your website and sometimes you need a text, but you don't have it yet, or probably you work closely with a copywriter, but you're not a copywriter, you are just a web designer and you need the text, you need a strong ACO-friendly text on your website. You can use that and the assistant will help you generate any type of text description. Okay, and I will check the chat. No, I think we don't have any more questions, but I think Ben answered enough questions so far, and thank you so much for such exciting presentation that you had today. Thank you for your answers, and guys, we will see you in the upcoming webinars. Feel free to subscribe to the newsletter, and we will see you soon. Bye.